Welcome to the True Guy Globe Brief Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for updates. The world is no longer defined by armies crossing borders but by invisible battles, cyber attacks, economic shocks, and viral disinformation. In this new era, the most powerful weapons are not tanks or missiles but lines of code, financial algorithms, and viral memes that can destabilize entire societies overnight. A drone strike in a distant desert sends oil prices soaring, while a cyber attack cripples a G7 nation's banks for hours. The ripple effects are immediate. Markets panic, citizens lose trust, and governments scramble to respond to threats they can barely see. Social media campaigns powered by bots can swing elections and install new regimes without a single shot fired. Disinformation spreads faster than truth, shaping public opinion and rewriting the rules of democracy in real time. This is the new global conflict, a struggle for economic dominance, technological supremacy, and narrative control. The front lines are digital, and the stakes are higher than ever, as nations and corporations race to outpace each other in innovation and influence. The old maps of power are obsolete. Power now flows through networks, platforms, and algorithms, not just nation-states. Influence is measured in data, connectivity, and the ability to shape global conversations. Corporations with revenues larger than many countries set standards and even conduct their own foreign policy. Tech giants and financial institutions wield influence that rivals traditional governments, blurring the lines between public and private power. Regional powers, once sidelined, now assert their interests with confidence. They form new alliances, challenge old hierarchies, and reshape the balance of power in unpredictable ways. The world is messier, less hierarchical, and harder to navigate. Borders blur, identities shift, and the pace of change leaves many struggling to keep up. The question is no longer who will be the next superpower, but what will a superpower even look like? The answer is evolving as new players and new rules emerge. The next global power isn't a country, it's a complex ecosystem of competing and cooperating entities. Governments, corporations, and networks all vie for influence, sometimes clashing, sometimes collaborating. The contest for the future is about controlling these new levers of influence, shaping the lives of billions. In this new world order, adaptability, innovation, and the ability to shape narratives are the ultimate sources of power. The fall of the Berlin Wall shattered the old world order, ending the US-Soviet rivalry that defined the 20th century. With the Soviet Union's collapse, the United States stood alone as the world's sole superpower, militarily, economically, and culturally unmatched. America's dominance combined hard power, military and economic might, with soft power, the global appeal of its culture and ideals. This unipolar moment allowed the US to set the international agenda and build coalitions for global challenges. But this dominance was always temporary. History favors multipolarity, not unchallenged hegemony. America's power inspired both resentment and imitation, as other nations adapted its models for their own rise. Globalization, championed by the US, spread wealth and knowledge, empowering new competitors. The seeds of today's complex, contested world were sown in America's moment of triumph. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Russia emerged from the wreckage as a shadow of its former self. Its vast empire dissolved, the economy in shambles, and society gripped by uncertainty and confusion. The loss of superpower status left a deep scar on the national psyche, and the country struggled to find its footing in a rapidly changing world. The 1990s were marked by chaos and hardship. Economic collapse led to widespread poverty, while political instability fueled mass protests and unrest. For many Russians, this era was a time of humiliation and trauma, sparking resentment and a powerful nostalgia for the days when Russia commanded global respect and fear. Vladimir Putin's rise to power at the turn of the millennium promised a return to order and national pride. Under his leadership, Russia projected strength, but this power was fragile, built on oil and gas exports, and a nuclear arsenal inherited from the Soviet era. Beneath the surface, the country's foundations remained weak and vulnerable. Instead of reclaiming its superpower status, Russia became a disruptive force on the world stage. It interfered in foreign affairs, challenged Western interests, and used cyber attacks and military provocations to spoil others' plans. Yet it lacked a compelling vision for the future, and its influence was often more destructive than constructive. The 2022 invasion of Ukraine was a desperate gamble to restore lost influence and prestige, but rather than demonstrating strength, the war exposed Russia's military shortcomings and deep economic vulnerabilities, revealing just how far the country had fallen behind its rivals. International sanctions and repeated failures on the battlefield accelerated Russia's decline. The country became increasingly isolated from the West, forced to rely on China for economic and diplomatic support, further limiting its independence and global reach. Today, Russia still possesses a formidable nuclear arsenal and remains a source of global disruption. However, it is no longer a true global contender. Its influence has shrunk, and its role in international affairs is increasingly marginal. Russia's actions in Ukraine serve as a stark warning of the dangers posed by a declining power lashing out. The conflict has brought immense suffering and instability, highlighting the unpredictable risks of Russia's current trajectory. In the New World Order, Russia is no longer a pillar, but a volatile variable. Its presence felt more through disruption than leadership, as global alliances shift and adapt without it. The world has moved forward, forging new partnerships and leaving Russia increasingly isolated. Once a dominant force, Russia now finds itself struggling to keep pace with a rapidly evolving global landscape. While Russia declined after the Cold War, China's remarkable transformation has reshaped the global landscape in unprecedented ways. Deng Xiaoping's visionary reforms initiated decades of explosive economic growth, lifting hundreds of millions from poverty and propelling China to become the world's second-largest economy, a feat that seemed unimaginable just a few decades ago. China's unique model of state-led capitalism has turned it into the global manufacturing hub, a powerhouse in technology, and a dominant force in international trade. Ambitious initiatives like the Belt and Road have extended Beijing's influence across continents, creating new economic dependencies and reshaping global trade routes. Unlike the Soviet Union, China challenges the US primarily on economic fronts, not just militarily or ideologically, presenting a new kind of global rivalry. But China's rapid rise has sparked significant friction: trade wars, territorial disputes, and a fundamental clash of political systems that have global implications. The US and its allies continue to promote liberal democracy, while China offers a model of authoritarian efficiency, challenging Western ideals. Domestically, China faces significant internal challenges, including an aging population, mounting debt, and severe environmental crises that threaten its long-term stability. Its often heavy-handed diplomacy wins clients, not friends, and its future as a true global leader remains uncertain, as it navigates complex international relations. The world watches closely to see if China can successfully convert its immense economic might into lasting global influence and leadership in the 21st century. As the world looks for leadership, America turns inward, divided by inequality and political polarization. The middle class shrinks while the wealth gap grows, fueling resentment and eroding trust in the system. Political gridlock and cultural schisms undermine America's ability to act decisively at home or abroad. Allies are left uncertain, adversaries emboldened, as US foreign policy swings between engagement and isolation. Exhaustion from endless wars has diminished the appetite for global leadership. America's soft power, once rooted in its democratic model, is tarnished by dysfunction and unrest. To lead again, the US must heal its internal divisions and rebuild consensus on its global role. The world no longer automatically looks to Washington for answers. The 21st century is defined by the rise of many powers, not just one. The US and China are the main players, but India, the EU, Turkey, Brazil, and others shape their own regions and agendas. India, the world's most populous democracy, pursues strategic autonomy, balancing ties with both the US and China. Regional actors like Turkey and Brazil assert themselves, while the EU sets global standards through regulation. Middle powers, Indonesia, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, act as swing states in global competition. This multipolar reality is less stable and predictable, with more actors and greater risk of miscalculation. Building coalitions for global challenges is harder than ever. The era of a single nation setting the agenda is over. The future will be shaped by shifting alliances and constant negotiation. Success now requires agility, diplomacy, and flexible partnerships. Global competition now plays out on three axes: military, economic, and digital. The US leads militarily, projecting unmatched force and providing security for allies. Economically, China challenges US dominance with manufacturing power and control over supply chains. The US wields the dollar and financial system as tools of influence. The digital axis is the newest battleground. Control over data, platforms, and algorithms shapes public opinion and commerce. Tech giants rival nations in digital power, influencing elections and even conflicts. These axes are deeply intertwined. Economic strength funds militaries, digital innovation drives both. Cyber attacks can disrupt economies and security without a single shot fired. To be a true superpower, a nation must integrate strength across all three domains. Weakness in one limits influence in the others. The next superpower will master the military, economic, and digital fronts. The rise of tech corporations marks a new era, where power isn't just about nations, but about who controls the digital infrastructure. Companies like Google, Apple, Meta, and their Chinese counterparts wield influence that rivals governments. Their platforms shape communication, commerce, and even politics for billions. Tech giants can deplatform leaders, influence elections, and make decisions with global consequences. In conflicts like Ukraine, their choices have been as impactful as those of states. Governments now both depend on and fear these digital sovereigns. The struggle to regulate tech power, over data, antitrust, and content, will define the digital age. The question, will power rest with elected governments or a handful of corporate executives? The outcome will shape democracy and freedom in the 21st century. The future of global power is uncertain, with several possible paths ahead. One scenario, a new Cold War between the US and China, dividing the world into rival blocs and stifling cooperation. Another, a chaotic multipolar world, with shifting alliances and rising proxy conflicts. Smaller nations risk being caught between competing giants. A third scenario, non-state actors, tech giants, corporations, NGOs, share power with governments, blurring lines of accountability. Citizens could find their lives governed as much by corporate policies as by national laws. The choices made today will shape whether the future is more equitable or more unstable. If inequality and unregulated technology persist, instability and loss of freedom may follow. The next superpower may not be a nation, but the system that emerges from this struggle.